I used to think the habit that ruined my life was working too much. That is what I told people when they asked why my marriage ended, why my kids stopped calling just to talk, and why I looked tired all the time, even after retirement. I worked too much, I would say, and people nodded because it sounded respectable. It sounded like sacrifice. It sounded like the kind of mistake a decent man makes while trying to provide. It let me keep my pride while admitting damage. But that was not the habit. Work was only the cover story. The habit that slowly ruined my life was postponing discomfort. I postponed hard conversations, hard decisions, hard apologies, and hard truths. If something made me feel exposed, I delayed it and called that delay being practical. I told myself I was waiting for a better time, a calmer week, a clearer head. I said I was trying to do things right. What I was really doing was protecting myself from the feeling of being wrong. I can trace it back to a Wednesday night in my 30s, standing in the garage with rain blowing in under the half-open door. Linda had just asked me a simple question while drying dishes. Are you happy? The kids were in the living room watching television. The house smelled like tomato sauce and wet coats. It was an ordinary night, the kind of night where life quietly turns. I could have answered honestly. I could have said, I don't know. I could have said I was tired and felt like I was disappearing. Instead, I laughed and said, I'm just stressed. It'll pass. Then I walked into the garage and started reorganizing a shelf that did not need reorganizing. I made myself busy to avoid being known. One shallow question and moved on before one shallow question and moved on before they could say anything that might require me to sit still and listen. I was not cruel. I was absent while standing right there. Back then, I thought avoiding conflict kept the family stable. I thought staying calm meant staying shallow. I thought love meant not making scenes. What I understand now is that silence is not peace when people are hurting. Delay is not wisdom when the truth is already in the room. That night in the garage, with rain tapping the metal door and my hands pretending to be useful, I felt the first crack in my life and did what I would do for years. I postponed the sound of it. I can see now how early I began mistaking motion for honesty. I was always doing something, and doing something felt safer than feeling something. That confusion cost me years. I can see now how early I began mistaking motion for honesty. I was always doing something, and doing something felt safer than feeling something. That confusion cost me years. Once you build a life around postponing discomfort, you get good at it. That is the dangerous part. It stops feeling like avoidance and starts feeling like personality. People called me steady. They said I was dependable under pressure. At work, that was mostly true. I could handle deadlines, angry clients, broken equipment, and payroll problems without raising my voice. I became the man people called when things went sideways. At home, I used the same skill to avoid being known. Linda kept trying for years, and I answered every serious question with a delay. Why don't you talk to me anymore? Why do you leave the room when things get serious? Why do you act like every problem is an inconvenience instead of a life? I always had an answer. Work was hard. I was tired. We were in a busy season. Things would settle down after the promotion, after the move, after the kids got older. Everything in my life was always going to happen after. One Saturday morning, Mark was around 12. sitting at the kitchen table with a science project spread everywhere, foam board, glue, markers, and a little motor he was excited about. I was drinking coffee and sorting bills, half listening while he talked. He kept saying, "Can you help me with this part?" And I kept saying, "In a minute." I still remember the way he looked at me on the third, "In a minute." He did not argue. He just nodded and started trying to do it himself. Linda was at the sink and saw the whole thing in the reflection of the window. She did not say anything then. She did not need to. I helped him eventually, but only after finishing papers that could have waited. That became my pattern as a father. I always showed up late enough to still claim I showed up. I arrived for the ending, not the struggle. I gave advice after the feeling had passed. I mistook delayed participation for parenting. What I believed then was that intent mattered most. I intended to be a good husband. I intended to be a good father. I intended to spend more time at home. I thought intentions bought me credit. What I understand now is that the people who love you live with your habits, not your intentions. They do not feel what you meant to do. They feel what you did repeatedly in ordinary rooms on ordinary days. The strangest part is how little resistance you get at first. People adapt to your patterns. They keep reaching until they get tired, and then they stop reaching. By my 40s, Linda had mostly stopped asking hard questions. Mark and Elise handled things on their own. The house got quieter, and I told myself that meant we were mature. I thought I had built a stable home. I had really built a home where nobody expected me to go deep because I had trained them not to. The first time Linda said she felt lonely, sitting 3 feet from me, I was on the couch pretending to watch a ball game. The television was on, but I could not have told you who was playing. I had one shoe off, one shoe on, and a plate balanced on my knee. It was one of those weeknights that blur together when you're raising kids, paying bills, and too tired to ask what kind of life you're building. She sat in the chair across from me and said, "Can we talk?" That sentence always tightened my stomach. Not because she was unfair, but because I already knew she had a point. I muted the television and tried to sound patient. "Sure." She held her hands together for a second before speaking. "I feel lonely in this house," she said, "even when you're here." I should have set the plate down. I should have looked at her and stayed quiet long enough to hear everything. Instead, I did what I always did when discomfort entered the room. I reached for a technicality. "I'm here every night," I said, "and that's not what I mean." "I don't know what you want me to say." Was not anger. It was fatigue. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to do the other thing. 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 I I want you to do the other thing. 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 I want you to do was not anger. It was fatigue. I want you to stop leaving every conversation the second it stops being easy, she said. Then she went to bed. I stayed on the couch another hour while the muted television flickered blue across the room. I told myself she was overreacting. I told myself every marriage gets tired. I told myself I worked hard, paid the mortgage, and stayed faithful, so what exactly was the problem? That was another one of my habits, measuring myself against worse men so I would not have to become a better one. Would have forced me to admit she was, would have forced me to admit she was right. I thought if I let the discomfort cool off overnight, the issue would disappear. It disappeared in a way. Linda stopped bringing that kind of thing to me for a while. At the time, I thought that meant we had moved past it. What I understand now is she moved around me. She stopped expecting me to stay in difficult conversations. She took her real thoughts somewhere else, and I helped create that distance. I did not understand then that emotional absence can feel harsher than open conflict. At least conflict admits something matters. By the time I noticed the distance between us, it had furniture in it, and we had both learned where to sit. Avoidance looked calm from the outside, but inside the house it taught everyone what not to bring to me. The divorce conversation happened in my early 50s at our dining room table on a Sunday afternoon, and I still remember noticing stupid details while my life was changing. A water ring on the wood, a loose thread on my sleeve, the hum of the refrigerator. Linda had made tea, and neither of us drank it. The house was quiet because the kids were grown, and there was nowhere for the noise to hide. She said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." I knew what she meant before she said the word. I felt it in my chest like a drop in an elevator. Even then, my first instinct was delay. "Can we not do this today?" I asked. She closed her eyes for a second, not dramatic, just tired. "That is the problem," she said. "It is never today with you." I tried every version of my old move. I asked for more time. I said we should wait until after the holidays. I said maybe we were in a rough stretch. I said we did not need to make a big decision all at once. I sounded calm, reasonable, mature. I had been polishing that voice for decades. Linda listened, then shook her head. "I've been waiting with you for 20 years, she said. "I'm done waiting." If I am honest, the divorce did not surprise me as much as it insulted me. That is ugly to admit, But it is true. I felt blindsided in the selfish way men sometimes do when consequences arrive exactly on time. I kept thinking, why is she making this so final? Why now? Why won't she give me a chance to fix it? What I did not ask was the real question. Why did I only become willing to face discomfort when the cost became unbearable? I moved into an apartment across town with a recliner, a mattress on the floor for the first month, and a television too big for the room. The silence there was different from the silence at home. At home, my avoidance blended into noise, kids, dishes, schedules, work calls. In the apartment, there was nowhere to hide. I could hear the bathroom fan and my own thoughts. For a while, I still ran the same pattern. I stayed late at work. I told people I was adjusting. I avoided calling the kids unless they called first because I did not know what to say. I told myself they needed space. Maybe they did. But I also needed an excuse. In that apartment, I started seeing how often I had confused delay with control. What I believed then was that divorce was the event that ruined my life. What I understand now is the event only exposed the habit that had been ruining it slowly for years. I had spent so long postponing hard truths that when the biggest one arrived, I still tried to reschedule it. I thought postponing difficult things kept me in control. Mostly it kept me alone. The kids stayed polite after the divorce, and that politeness hurt more than anger would have. Mark called on holidays. Elise texted photos of the grandkids and short updates about school plays and birthdays. They did not shut me out completely. They kept me in the outer circle where everything was civil and almost nothing was honest. I told myself that was normal. Adult children get busy. Families change. Life moves. All of that is true. It was also another place to hide. One spring afternoon, Elise invited me to my granddaughter's recital at a school gym about 40 minutes away. I wrote it down, set a reminder, and honestly meant to go. The morning of the recital, a former co-worker called asking if I could come look at a problem on a rental property. It was not an emergency. It was a stuck valve and a tenant complaint. It could have waited. I heard myself say, I can swing by for an hour. I missed the recital by 23 minutes. I arrived while parents were folding chairs and kids were running around in shiny shoes and wrinkled costumes. Elise was near the bleachers, packing things into a bag. She looked up, saw me, and gave me that same polite smile. "It's okay," she said before I even spoke. "You made it." I stood there with flowers in my hand like a man who had brought an apology to the wrong address. My granddaughter hugged my legs because children are generous, and I felt something in me sink. Elise was kind the whole time. Too kind. She was protecting both of us from the conversation. On the drive home, I got angry at traffic, at my coworker, at the school, at my phone reminder for not being louder. I was furious at everything except the truth. I chose discomfort avoidance again. I chose the small, immediate tension of saying no to nobody over the larger responsibility of showing up for my family. That night, Mark called about something unrelated, and before hanging up, he said, "Hey, Elise said you missed most of the recital." I said, "I got stuck at a property." He went quiet, then said, "Yeah." That one word stayed with me. No lecture, no argument, just history in a syllable. What I understand now is that trust usually erodes through repetition, missed moments, deferred talks, delayed apologies. 1,000 times someone learns not to count on your presence in the hard or important parts. My habit trained my children to expect less from me, and then I mistook their lowered expectations for peace. That recital was not the worst thing I missed, but it was the first time I drove home, knowing, without excuses, that I was still living the same life in a different house. I was getting older, and my habit was aging with me. That day, the drive home felt longer because I could not hide behind the old story anymore. That day, the drive home felt longer because I could not hide behind the old story anymore. The change did not begin with a breakthrough. It began with a phone call I almost ignored. It was Mark on a Tuesday evening in November. I was in the garage again, sorting hardware into old coffee cans like I had all the time in the world. His name lit up on my phone, and for a second I thought, I'll call him back after I finish this. The thought came so fast, it felt automatic, like reaching for a tool in the dark. Then I heard myself thinking it, and something in me got tired. I answered. His voice sounded strained, not panicked, but tight. Hey, Dad, you got a minute? I sat down on an upside-down bucket. Yeah, I've got a minute. He let out a breath like he had been bracing for me to be distracted. Jen and I are having a rough time, he said. I don't really know who else to call. 10 years earlier, I would have gone straight into fix-it mode. I would have offered advice by minute 2, listed practical steps, and maybe made a joke to lower the temperature. I almost did it then. I could feel the old reflex rise in my chest. Instead, I said, tell me what's going on. He talked for 40 minutes about money, sleep, resentment, work schedules, and both of them feeling unseen. He was not asking me to solve it. He was asking me to stay. Halfway through, he said, I don't know if I'm making sense, and I said, you are. And for once, I meant more than the words. Then he asked, were you and Mom like this before things got bad? That question landed hard. I could have dodged it. I could have said every marriage is different. I could have protected my image the way I always had. Instead, I told the truth. Yes, I said, and I kept avoiding the hard conversations because I wanted things to feel calm. That made it worse. He got quiet. Then he said, that sounds familiar. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, I said, it does. When we hung up, I stayed in the garage with the phone in my hand and felt grief and relief at the same time. Grief for how many calls I had not taken seriously. Relief that I had stayed for this one. It was a small moment from the outside, a man on a bucket talking on the phone. No music, no speeches, but it mattered. What I believed for most of my life was that change required a dramatic decision. What I understand now is that change starts when you interrupt a habit in the exact moment it tries to run you. The call did not fix Mark's marriage, and that was not the point. That night, I did not become a different man. I practiced being one. The point was not perfect advice. The point was presence, and presence was what I had withheld for too long. After that call with Mark, I started noticing how often my life still tilted toward avoidance, not just in big moments, but constantly. I would read a text from Elise and think, I'll answer later. I would remember an old friend I owed an apology and think, maybe next week. I would feel my chest tighten during a hard conversation and immediately want to make coffee, check the mail, fix a hinge, anything to step out of the feeling. The habit was not one behavior. It was a way of moving through life. So I made a rule that sounded small and embarrassed me because of how basic it was. If it matters and it feels uncomfortable, do not delay the first step. Return the call. Send the message. Ask the question. Stay in the chair. Do not wait to feel ready. Readiness was the lie I had used for decades. I tested that rule with Elise first. I called her one Sunday afternoon and said, "I owe you an apology for more than the recital." She got quiet, and for a second I almost backed out. I almost turned it into one of those vague apologies that protects the speaker and asks nothing. I had given those before. They are useless. Instead, I stayed with the discomfort. "I taught you I might show up late," I said. "Not just that day. For a lot of your life. I am sorry." There was a long pause. I could hear a dishwasher running in the background. Then she said very softly, "Thank you for saying that." We did not solve everything in that call. She did not suddenly pour out years of hurt. It was not a movie. But the conversation was real, and real was new for us. Over the next year, I kept practicing. I visited when I said I would. I left work projects unfinished sometimes. I answered calls, even when I felt tired. I stopped telling myself that being a good man was a stable identity and started treating it like a series of choices made under pressure. That changed me more than anything. For years, I thought character was what I believed about myself. Now I think character is what you do 1 minute after discomfort enters the room. I still failed. I still caught myself reaching for delay. The difference was I noticed it sooner and lied about it less. When I missed a call, I called back that day. If I dodged a topic, I brought it up the next morning. I stopped letting avoidance turn into distance. What I understand now is that repair is slow because habits are slow. The same thing that ruins a life slowly can help rebuild one slowly too. Repetition, showing up again, staying longer, telling the truth before the room goes cold. I had spent decades practicing escape. In my 60s, I started practicing presence. It felt awkward at first, then humbling, then finally like home. No one claps for this kind of change. It happens in ordinary moments when you choose not to leave. I am in my 70s now, and I still think about that question Linda asked me at the sink all those years ago. "Are you happy?" I gave the wrong answer because I was afraid of where the right one would lead. I thought honesty would create problems I was not strong enough to handle. The truth is, dishonesty created problems I could not outrun. Linda and I are not together, and that is one of the clearest consequences of my life. We are kinder to each other now than we were at the end. We can talk without performing. We can mention old things without pretending they did not happen. But some losses do not reverse just because you finally understand them. They become part of your education. My relationship with Mark and Elise is better. Not perfect, not magically repaired, but real. Mark calls me when he is overwhelmed. Elise asks if I can come early and help set up for family events, and I go. I go when it is inconvenient. I go when I am tired. I go when I would rather stay home and sort tools in the garage, especially then. A few months ago, my grandson asked if I could help him build a birdhouse for school. We spread the pieces out on the kitchen table, and the wood smelled fresh and dusty. Halfway through, my phone buzzed with a call from a neighbor about a lawnmower problem. I looked at the screen, felt the old reflex, and turned the phone face down. My grandson kept talking, explaining where he wanted the little perch to go, and I listened all the way through. We made mistakes, pulled nails, started over, laughed, and finished later than planned. When he left, he hugged me hard and ran out carrying that crooked birdhouse like a trophy. I stood in the quiet kitchen and felt grief and gratitude together again. Grief for the years I gave to a habit that emptied my life one postponed discomfort at a time. Gratitude that I learned the pattern before the end and not after. If I say this plainly now, it is because plain truth is what I needed when I was younger. The habit that slowly ruined my life was not anger, addiction, or ambition, though any of those can ruin a life too. Mine was quieter. Mine looked reasonable. Mine wore a responsible face. I kept delaying what hurt to face, and in doing that, I delayed my own life. What I understand now is simple and costly. Discomfort is often the doorway to the exact conversation, moment, or repair that matters most. If you keep walking past that doorway, your life can stay functional for a long time while quietly falling apart. Mine did. Then, late, I learned to stop walking past it. That did not give me my old life back. It gave me something better for the years I have left. It gave me the habit of staying.